Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and how's it going? Do you guys like gaming? Well, Windows is pretty much about to die in less than a month. Windows 10 is about to be pulled off of life support, and your only chance is to go to Windows 11. But what if there was another way, gamer, that you could go? The Linux way. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the catalyst for this video was that I love the Steam Deck. In fact, as of right now, I'm installing some good old Indiana Jones and the Great Circle onto it. Surprisingly, that game runs real well on a Steam Deck. But I wondered, could it run a little bit better? Now, I made videos talking about SteamOS and, how excited I am to actually see it finally come out. But what if it really doesn't need to be said that you don't need to wait for SteamOS if you want a gaming operating system? I feel like for a lot of people, they're waiting to go onto SteamOS's page and see a big old download button and just install it onto their main system. Let me know in the comment section if you're one of those people, because I think that's just kind of the matter, right? But I don't think SteamOS is going to come out for general computers for a little bit, okay? I really think Valve is trying to cook something that's super duper unique. In my personal opinion, I think they might actually be working with big companies to get anti-cheats kind of working, but that's just speculation on my behalf. Now, the Steam Deck is a great piece of hardware, and the best part about the Steam Deck is it's not locked down like other handhelds. No, the Steam Deck actually allows you to wipe SteamOS completely, and you can install things like Windows. So if you're somebody that wants to play Call of Duty or your Game Pass games directly onto your Steam Deck, you can just wipe the Linux and install Windows, okay? I have seen people try to attempt macOS installation. I've never done it myself, nor would I care to do it, but because it's the freedom of your choices, you can do whatever it is that you want. So in this case, I decided to wipe SteamOS and install what I consider to be the absolute better option. Now, if you go to DistroWatch, one of the cool things about this service is that you can kind of see what are the most popular Linux distribution. Now, this is not a perfect list, but I used to be a Linux Mint enjoyer. I actually promoted it pretty much. I was using it for a few months. Part of it was me doing this thing called distro hopping, which is effectively being like a computer software slut. So, you just kind of switch operating systems until you find what works for you. Now, for years, I was using something known as Arch Linux, which, again, if you've ever met any Linux person on the internet, they'll probably mention that they use Arch Linux, okay? It's kind of a huge badge of honor, and a lot of it comes from the fact that it is a little bit more difficult than the rest of the Linux distributions. You typically have to go into the command, shell from the beginning and sort of build it bit by bit. The big benefit is if you know how to build your system, which is effectively following the brilliant Arch Wiki, you can make the least bloated, or you can make the most to your style of Linux possible. You can install exactly what you need. For fuck's sake, if you don't want to have a desktop environment, you don't even need one. You can use it as a headless system. If you want to install certain packages and delete, you can do whatever you want. But I decided, what if I wanted to use something that does this all for me and has extra enhancements that makes the system super duper snappy? So at the number one position is something known as CachyOS. Now, CachyOS has kind of been around for a little bit, and I've used their software for the last few years just to get access to more exclusive game features that typically would only be on Windows. So if you go to their website, you can see that they bill themselves as the blazingly fast and customizable Linux distribution. And there's no joke about it. If you actually look at some of the benchmark work going on, they are pound for pound same as Arch Linux, but in some cases they might actually be giving a little bit better performance when it comes to watts, right? So for instance, the fewer watts consumed, generally the better. The more optimal that operating system is, the better. Now, obviously above them is something known as Clear Linux. Now, Clear Linux is something that I've kind of dabbled around with years ago, but unfortunately, Clear Linux is discontinued. So really, the next best thing from my experience is CachyOS. So to give you an idea about how CachyOS takes it on, you can go to their site, go to download, and you can download a desktop edition, which is what I've used, and you can actually download the handheld edition, which supports Rogue Allies, Steam Decks, Legion Go's, all of them. Basically any handheld, PC computer that you can use to play video games. You can install handheld edition and get those same benefits that we're getting on the PC. Now to install CachyOS, it was a simple matter of taking a flash drive, downloading that handheld edition or desktop edition, depending on what you prefer, using a program known as Balena Etcher to copy the ISO you downloaded to your flash drive, and then booting into it on your device. Now, if you're on a PC, you can boot into the USB as you normally would, but if you're on a Steam Deck, as long as you have these USB hubs, you can connect your flash drive in, and holding the volume down and power key, you can boot into the USB. At this moment in time, you will be present with the actual live environment of CachyOS. So from here, it's as easy as going to the install program, which is typically just pop up to you the first time you boot in. And of course, from here, you can pick your locale, you can pick your region, enter a password. You can even wipe or dual boot CachyOS alongside SteamOS or anything with ease. Now, once you've installed the actual system, you'll go through a few updates. The initial boot up will be a little longer because you're also downloading Steam and everything alongside. But once everything is said and done, the one-time setup will kick in, which is incredibly similar to a standard Steam Deck. And once everything is up and going, you might realize that maybe nothing's really changed. But this is where the secret sauce comes in. So going to the guys over at CachyOS, why would you use this Linux system? Well, it's because they provide a large selection of optimized packages for various CPU architectures. So you know how Windows 11 has those wacky system requirements? Well, if you look at CachyOS, the system requirements, at least to the minimum end, are 3 gigs of RAM, 30 gigabytes of storage, and I'm sure you guys have at least that, a stable internet connection, especially for installations and updates. And of course, when you look at the micro architecture level support, it has more CPUs supported than obviously Windows 11 supports. If you can tell by the Intel 4th and 5th, and I believe the 6th generation, which is actually supported by Cachy, but not by Windows 11 from my understanding. And all of this without bullshitting with the installer and trying to convince it to install on unsupported hardware. Now, the other big thing about all of this that is really key and important too is this is Linux. It's not Windows. You don't have to worry about wacky stuff spying on you or this weird feeling that, CachyOS is going to install a whole bunch of bloatware, dog shit, AI slop into your system that you'll always have to, in between updates, constantly be getting rid of. Remember, this is Arch Linux. So a lot of stuff that's in CachyOS you can also play around with on regular Arch Linux if you know what you're doing. But the big benefit of this is it takes a lot of the headache out and simplifies the process for the average gamer, which is, again, the market that I want to cater to. Now, one of the things about their systems that they talk about more importantly is that they have custom kernels tuned for performance and stability. So for instance, aside from the base kernel patch set that tunes various kernel parameters to improve desktop responsiveness, CachyOS cherry picks patches sets that have not been mainlined or are not included on the stable revision of the kernel. Therefore, these patches undergo internal testing before being released to ensure that stability isn't impacted. So it's a very curated experience that's not designed to completely destroy your system. Now again, because this is a rolling release, meaning that you're really just getting things as they release, there are things that can break. There's a good chance your Steam Deck could break in an update if you install this system. But my personal experience has shown me that's usually the exception rather than the norm. So of course, they've also got the advanced CPU scheduler support. So they've got EEVDF and BOR, which again, all of this stuff combined together, what is really the thing you have to understand is this is a very snappy operating system. Now, this is probably the most snappiest system that I've been using for a while now, and I've been blown away just how better of an experience this is as compared to other systems. Now, again, CachyOS, I wouldn't be making a video on it if I didn't actually feel that it was an overall better experience, which is something I can actually advertise to you and at least tell you guys that if you're a gamer and you want something that runs smooth and snappy, this is it. But it doesn't just stop there. One of the cool things that you can do with CachyOS that I find really, really awesome is the gaming support they have is basically built right in. So if you go to their wiki and you go to gaming, one of the reasons why I want to kind of talk about the CachyOS wiki is it's very centric to CachyOS. Just because this is Arch Linux, I highly do not advise that if you have an issue with this, you go over to the guys over at Arch Forums and make a big hubbub about it, because they're probably going to rip you to shreds if you start asking them help when it really should be the CachyOS dudes. But they have an amazing community, and I highly recommend if you have problems, check out their Discords, check out their actual community. They will help you. But of course, when you go into their gaming section, they have all the packages super easy to access. So if you go to their essential packages, they have many ways that you can get inside here, but the meta package is probably the one that most of you gamers are going to be using. So if you open up that spooky terminal shell, ladies and gentlemen, yes, it might seem scary, but if you look at it, it can be kind of cool. So if you copy this exact command, sudo pacman-s CachyOS gaming meta, and just basically hit enter, you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that it will basically install all of the packages you ever needed. Now, I've already got this installed on my system, so I really don't need to play around, but let's say you also wanted all of the other stores built in beyond just Steam, like Heroic Games and Lutris, you can install the extra gaming applications. And, of course, once all of this is done, it comes with a special type of Proton called Proton CachyOS, which basically has a lot of these patches, FSR, codecs, UMU launchers, and these various hotfixes for games built right in. So, of course, when you download a game like Cyberpunk 2077, you can right-click, go to Properties, and of course, you can also just go to Proton CachyOS and hit that native package. Now, the reason why this is important is because it has a lot of extra boons provided to it that make it overall better, in my opinion, than just using regular Steam Proton. Again, this is meant for gamers that kind of want to be at that cutting, bleeding edge of gaming tools. You know, you want to make sure that your experience is kind of on par or as close as you can to Windows. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of friction for people switching over. Now, the other big thing that I find really awesome about CachyOS is that if you're somebody that wants to update their system and enable things like HDR, or if you want to automatically upgrade things like FSR, they give you all of these environment variables that you can copy into the launch command for your various games and basically get these boons without actually putting in the entire system does all of the technical stuff sometimes in the background for you. So that I find to be really fucking cool in this process. And of course, obviously, the gaming performance. Generally, I found the performance to be on par with regular Linux, if not a little bit better, okay? It's just a more responsive system. I feel like for the first time using Linux, and really it does feel for the first time that my system is as responsive as like a Mac system or even like a well-tuned Windows system. It just works really fucking well. And of course, obviously, it goes without saying that there are certain games that just won't work. So for instance, games that have that strict anti-cheat support will not work. So if you're playing something like that new Skate game, doesn't support Linux yet, so if that's holding you back, then it's going to hold you back. But overall, guys, the experience that's provided here is actually pretty goddamn awesome, especially considering the fact that this is free, open source, and even if you don't play video games, for instance, I think the general responsive snappiness of this operating system is just worth the price of installing, okay? Not to say that regular Arch Linux can't be modified in this way, but for any of you guys that are kind of new to Linux, this is at least a good foot in the door for people to play around with the ever-coveted Arch Linux world, right? It's just actually that fucking good. Probably the only other most responsive operating system compared to this might be like... I don't I don't know. I don't know. Well optimized Gen 2, Hannah Montana OS, Ret Star OS. You catch my drift, okay? Now, obviously, look, I'm just making this video for the gamers that want to exodus from Windows. But if you're still somebody that wants pure stability, there's still no better option than things like Linux Mint. But if you're a gamer, Linux Mint is great, but it feels like it's kind of held back because of how less focused it is on gaming and more on stability. So for me, switching over to CachyOS, just everything runs smoother, the games run smoother, the whole system runs smoother, and I'm actually impressed by saying that I think the guys behind this have absolutely earned their #1 spot, at least on the coveted, not really, the distro watch list. That said, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed it. It's a great replacement for things like the Steam Deck, but I can understand if you just want to keep regular SteamOS. I mean, why not? But if you got like one of those Rogue Allies or one of those Legion Go's, there is no reason not to install CachyOS if you just want that snappy gaming with at least, I would say, an extra chunk of battery life remaining and just better performance overall in general, especially if all you do is play single-player games like I do these days. That said, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am out.